Okay, so now that you know how to make a proper fist and you know the stances and are pretty proficient at those, let's move on to Tantui. So Tantui consists of 10 sets of movement. We call each set a line, and these lines are practiced nowadays doing moving back and forth. So you'll do one line maybe along a stretch of 10 to 20 meters going in one direction, then you come to an end, turn around and do the next line coming back along that same 10 to 20 meters, and you stop on this side and you switch back to the next line, and you go back and forth until all 10 lines are done. So it's an even number, so you will end up finishing in the same spot that you started in. So Tantui, it consists of movements that are mostly designed to build your structure and with kind of the basic strikes mostly and kind of defensive postures in mind. So when you get onto where you do the forms, right, Chachuan it starts with the 10 lines of Tantui, and then it progresses into 10 long forms. And those forms are more complete. They have a lot of footwork in all directions, turning movements, jumping movements. And, it's just it's quite a lot of variety, and sort of methods of using these fundamental movements that you practice in Tantui. So that's the kind of idea. You should always come back to Tantui. There's always something to learn, and everything you learn in Tantui is a fundamental structure. So it makes everything that you do in the forms better. Okay, so Tantui opens with a kind of a ceremonial opening, and you step forward, zigzag motion, come to this position, and then from here you're actually ready to start practicing the lines of Tantui. So, it's not really that important in your daily practice to do the opening, and then the closing is just the opposite. But if you're performing someplace, then that's part of the traditional opening and closing that we do in Tantui. So this opening movement, again, you step out in this direction, then you step back in this direction, and so you kind of walk a zigzag. From here, you just relax, make this hand motion, come up to almost your waist. As you're stepping forward, you bring both hands forward to here. Then you come back in the opposite direction as you're stepping over in the other direction, and bring your hands to this position. So it's important to note that this is not like karate, so you don't want to go. This is not Chachuan, it's not like that. So you need to develop structure, but our goal is to develop structure that flows with movement. It turns out that great strength or great power comes from using a really good structure while you're in motion, and then using your body, getting your body weight to connect with your movements. So that's the sort of end game for developing power. When you start, you do use hard movements, use as much of your body and muscle as you can. But that's mostly for you to find out for yourself how to generate the most power with a punch or a kick or whatever. And everybody's path from that to where we want to end up will be a little bit different. But after you've developed the kinds of strength that work, for arm movements, leg movements, body movements, then you can use that strength that you've developed and the wisdom that you've developed in generating it to a more fluid type of movement. So I think even a lot of people talk about training the same way. It's not that unusual. But right from the get-go, you want to start moving in a fluid sort of manner, not like a robot. So here, in this position, you have an alignment from your head, your nose, down through your solar plexus, down to your feet. All this is vertical. And then here you kind of arch your back out a little bit, push your chest out, lean forward just to the degree forward and up to the degree that your heels start to come off the ground. And that will be this position here. So if you should have already gone through the horse stance video training, and maybe you've seen some other videos of parts of line 1 Tantui that I've produced. And we talk about the position of the spine and the hips. For example, when you do a horse stance, right, they can be narrow or wide, whatever, but it's kind of important how you carry your weight on your hips, how you direct it to your hips. So the two different methods are, one, you sink and you tilt your back here and push your hips out a little bit and sink down. So this is really a good structure for if you want to sink and rise quickly. And you'll see if you watch gymnasts during competition, they usually have an arch in their back, and when they're doing their flips and balances and that sort of thing, it's because this is the most balanced position of your spine, most balanced way to carry your body and move up and down quickly. However, there are some other movements you might want to do. For example, twisting from side to side. So from this position with your hips back, you kind of lock your waist. So it's not going to turn so freely. So we have another variation of the horse stance where your hips just slightly tuck under, your abs squeeze in, and your spine is more straight, and you relax and sink down this way. Now here, your waist becomes very free. It's not locked at all. So in some movements, you'll want to have your hips and abs in this using this structure, and others you'll want to use this structure for moving up and down, for example. It's just it's really a natural thing. You would do these kinds of things naturally if you moved efficiently, but in Kung Fu they've taken a note of that and studied it, and then examined maybe closely how you can use this natural attribute of human movement and where it makes sense. So sometimes without training you do things not intuitively, and so this is something you can mess up. So this is with respect to the horse stance. Also, if you were doing a one-legged stance and maybe you do something like this. So this also, in this kind of balance, you want to bring your hips in, and you'll find more structure that way. But it kind of is unusual, because you might think that you want to arch your back and come up this way, and what you'll find is the balance is not really great here. Here it's a kind of natural balance, and you still maintain some flexibility. So okay, getting carried away, that's a deep subject, and there's a lot you examine your own movement, and over time you'll have a large story to tell about what you've experienced by tilting with respect to the position of your hips when you squat. So yeah, it's not, it doesn't, to change from one to the other is not a very big deal, but it's just good to know what you're doing there. So when you open here, right, you use the hips go back and you stand up. the first movement is around this way, and you end up in a bow stance. So you straighten this leg, you bring your weight over this foot, you bring your knee to a position where when you want to step up, your knee doesn't have to travel very far, so you make your stepping efficient. And you do kind of arch your back and pull in your abs, and then just lean forward slightly. You'll find where you can bring the most body weight to bear without losing balance. So that's you use that bow stance. When you go through this movement, you'll find that you want to tuck your hips under. This movement is, if you push your hips back, this movement is not very agile because your waist is locked. So here, you want your hips tucked under. And again, don't over exaggerate. You just play with this hip position thing and find your comfort zone. And everybody's body is different, and way of understanding it is different. So everyone will be slightly different that way. You have to play with it yourself. So here though, you don't want to lock your waist because your waist needs to be free. When you get to here, it changes. You have some power. So this movement is it's very important for Chachuan in self-defense, because we want to be able to meet an opponent. If there's fists flying, you meet here, right? And you step in like your arm. It's like arms against arms, and the slight push can jam, right? If the person is throwing multiple punches, you just step in and push, and you destroy that because they have to reposition their body to get distance. But also part of this is to stick. So once you get in here, you kind of follow the other person's arms with your arms. And on top of that, you want to develop a rhythm. So you stick and you want to move here. So these can move this way, they can start to separate and move this way, right? They can go the other way, start to separate, go the other way. And many techniques can come out of this movement kind of thing. So this is a really important thing, and we'll get into that in more advanced classes. But what you should know and what you should do when you're practicing Tantui is not just do the lines, but sometimes just practice the ideas inside Tantui one at a time, and then come back and put them all together, and you have a better line. So that's kind of one of the ways of practicing. Okay, so you got to here. Your first movement here. That's one. Second movement is a yoke punch. Here, come back to your waist and punch. So the yoke punch is very specific too. It has the idea that this arm moves back and up while this one moves forward, and also there's a little bit of rocking. Your body moves forward a bit, and you turn your shoulders while your arms go through this, take that path. During the rest of the line, you'll be doing this after a kick. So it's a little bit slightly different, but this first time doesn't have a lot of body movement with the punch. And it's mostly about just getting the structure. So the specifics of the yoke punch are that from this bow stance, when your arm swings back, it takes this path and it swings back up high enough that it's level with your ear. Right? Rule number one, very specific. Rule number two is that when you're standing in your bow stance, if you draw a line through your knee, so if I'm standing this direction and I draw a line at 90 degrees through my knee, it'll be going this way. So this hand should come back far enough so it's just on top of that line and at ear height. The front hand, when it punches, should come right in front of your solar plexus, here. So horizontally, it comes right in front of this point, and vertically, it also comes right in front of this point. So that, among other things, the first thing that does is it gives you defense in your offense. So when you punch here, at this point your arm is at an angle and it can catch your opponent's arm on the way through and sort of turn into a sort of a pressing motion as well as a punch. And again, that can be advanced, and we'll cover that idea later too. But it's just, for now, remember that it can be defense inside of offense. And when you cover this area, it's kind of defensive too, because this is not a good place to get hit. So you want to, some of your strikes, when you're going for the body, sometimes you want to strike in ways that cover this. Okay, so that covers the hand positions of this punch. Then you need to play with the momentum of moving your hand this way, because you'll notice that when you do this, your shoulders, your chest moves, your shoulders turn. So that's part of what this does. It adds momentum to the turning of your shoulders, which then translates into the force that shoots down your arm. And when you get to the top, this position is such that you could stop here or other positions, and I'm not arguing. Some styles use that, and that's great. But the idea here is that from here, you're in a position, and you can feel it, that the weight of your hand, the momentum that you created, kind of circles back, and you can feel it flow down your arms, through your back, into this shoulder, and out through this arm. So this arm is adding power to this punch. At the same time that this fist is moving this way, you need to use this one to add power to this punch. Sometimes you just practice this because you need to get this feeling of this arm adding power. So if you were to punch like this, you get a little bit of that, but not so much. But this is big, huge. So that's, I guess those are the basics of the yoke punch. I think I have some other videos on the yoke punch, and it talks about some more advanced principles. So try to find that if you can, and put 2 and 2 together, and you get a more complete picture. So I've been doing this for Chachuan for more than 20 years, and I still, you know, I don't feel like I've discovered everything inside of it. And, you know, I still have notes from my teacher, and some of them I'm sure still carry like some understanding of what's going on here that I haven't figured out yet. So yeah, put a lot of time, study yourself, and follow the rules precisely, especially to begin with. Okay, so we have 1, 2, then we have 3. It's basically an elbow. And then we have, so this elbow can be just a strike, but it can also be like a bridge. When you meet somebody's arm, you can press. You can use each elbow as a strike. But when you meet your opponent, quite often their hands will be up, and maybe you didn't hit the body, but you connect with the arms. Don't throw that away. Use that. Press. So this has the idea that from here, you can press forward, turn, just follow your opponent. And sometimes you can pivot here, they press, and you can come up and maybe just touch the nose lightly. And you can also press from this position. So again, these are more advanced techniques that we'll cover in depth later on. But for now, you just need to know, just for your interest, that it's more than just a strike here. It's a structure that actually allows these other things to happen as well. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth movement is a movement like this, and it will continue. This is like 4.5. But the idea here is pretty simple. Like sometimes you might use your elbow, be pushing, and somebody drops down and tries to grab your leg. So for one of our defenses for this from here is just here. And this strike, you use this part of your hand, and it connects like at the back of, maybe just below the base of this of your skull but on the neck, or a little bit further down on your neck, or on the spine. That can be lethal. So you can't use that in sports fighting. In fact, it's illegal for good reason. You can't do that. But we're not really training for sports fighting at this moment. We're training the traditional martial art. And the traditional martial art is like somebody, you launch this quick strike right away. And you know, they might be higher or taller or lower. So in the form you just use the natural curve of your arm, but in reality you need to practice so you can get this power no matter what the height is for this purpose. So that was 4.5. Why it's 4.5 is because it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop here. It continues to move and comes right up to this position, which is in your fist is in line with the line over your knee, and ear height on this side. And then when it gets to here, you time that with a punch on this side, in front of your solar plexus and centered. Right? Make sure you're using the proper chaw or natural fist. And again, there's a video on that. It's very, very important for this line. And for Tantui, really. Okay, so I'll count it this way. Sometimes it changes. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Elbow on this side. Same idea. 7, and then on this one, when you come down, you at the same time step up. So this time, instead of simply striking, you strike and bring your knee up. So you have two things happening here. It's double jeopardy. It's very bad. Right? So here to here. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and from here you kick and stomp down and punch all at the same time. So we can break that down though. This kick is like a push kick. It's not a snapping kind of. There has to be some snapping motion to it, or power doesn't transfer effectively. But the idea is that when you kick, you push at the same time. Connect and push. So other styles have that idea too, but what is a little bit unique is that we don't stop there. It's a push and claw, downwards kick. So if I just push you, you're going to move back. But if I push and use my weight to claw down with this connection, it's going to kind of drive you towards the ground as well. So you can't run away so easily from this kick. And so that's from here. And you step down here. And while you're stepping down, you launch a yoke punch on this side now. So I started with a yoke punch on this side, and I ended up with a yoke punch on this side, which is my cue to start the line on the other side. Ooh, bang. And I just keep going now. I go one side after the other, I do my 10 or 20 meters, or however long I've chosen to train for. You know, there's a legend that the caravan guards used to practice Tantui first thing every morning while they're marching alongside of the caravan. And it's said that they would go about 20 or 25 kilometers in distance doing just Tantui, all 10 lines over and over again. In fact, in the past, it said there was more than 20 lines of Tantui, but they've all been lost. There's 10 or 12 now, depending on the school that you're in. But we're kind of, this is military Chachuan that my teacher learned from his teacher, who was the head long fist instructor at Huang Pu military school. So in that school they had 10 lines of Tantui. And I think it's traditional too, that for Chachuan, that's what most of the lineages have now. So we do 10 lines. Okay, so that line 1 here. Here. And then you'll keep going. At the end, where you stop, your cue to stop is that you will do a kick here and a punch that leaves you facing the same way that you started, right? And at that point, you don't have to count. You want to do an even number on both sides, but when that condition happens, that you're doing your punch and you end up facing the same way, you know that you've done one on each side. It's an even number. So this last punch from here, instead of carrying on with it, open this hand, bring it over your head, and push forward as your fist comes back to your waist. Then step up and do this punch. Feet come together, you sink and turn as you punch low. And that's the end of the line, and all the lines end that way. So from here, the next line is you're going to turn back, start going back the 10 or 20 meters in the other direction. Okay, that's line 1. Practice that well, and we'll come back and do line 2.